That won't stand.
That's a stupid idea.
You're so beautiful. You look just like me.
There's no money in art. You'll never make anything of yourself. Get a real job.
Tonight's news, a Wayne Barker original just sold for $300,000.
You're not talented. Man over the mountain. You'll never get far.
Soz malazi kamama.
You're not as good as them. Who do you think you are?
Small town boy on the big stage. Lucanyon Dingy opens for Paris Fashion Week.
Standard Bank, it can be.
Join the world's fastest growing platform for women who lead as we embark on a journey that transcends boundaries and empowers generations. Welcome to the 8th annual Standard Bank Top Woman Conference for Africa. This October 18th and 19th, you'll join our community of the world's most remarkable women leaders, activists, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and philanthropists will converge at the prestigious Galleria Conference and Events venue in Sandton, Johannesburg, South Africa. At this immersive 2-day conference, our global community of women will come together to break the glass ceiling, share invaluable insights, practical solutions, and networks that will ignite a spark of inspiration around the world. It's more than an event, it's a movement. The Standard Bank Top Women's Conference for Africa, where women lead, where dreams soar, and where we rise above the noise together. Oh yes, so far the Standard Bank Top Women Conference has been everything that it has promised to be. I know we've been getting so much positive feedback in terms of day one yesterday, so we have to follow it up, right? Keep the great vibes going, keep the inspiration going, and the wonderful conversations. Today we are going to finish on an absolute high. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 2 of the Standard Bank Top Women Conference. I know we had said that we were going to start off this morning very early with a treasure hunt, but what we did decide to do is that throughout the day, we're going to be giving away a couple of spot prizes. I think it's just easier that way. And of course, we want to remind you as well to go to all of the different expo areas, just hear and learn a little bit more about the exhibitors, the different companies that have come out here to showcase their services and collect a whole bunch of goodies throughout the day. So today, once again, plenty of spot prizes will be given away throughout the day. Once again, we just want to say a big thank you to, of course, an organization that recognizes the power of women and the potential of our African females, continuously banking on women. They are our platinum partners, our platinum sponsors. Thank you, Standard Bank. So many wonderful sponsors and partners that have made this possible. So again, just want to remind you and say thank you to our gold sponsor. Our gold sponsor is multinational consumer goods giant Procter & Gamble Africa. Our incredible silver sponsors are GBVF Response Fund, Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, Food Bev Manufacturing CETA, and Visa. Thank you. Thank you to our bronze partners, Grey Sun Media, KZN Oils, Blue Label Telecoms, Shumang Group, to Avis, to Mandate Molefe Human Resource Consultants, to Gauteng Partnership Fund, Business Directive Contract Services, and Accenture. and making sure that this conference is an unforgettable experience for all of our delegates. Our showcase partners are IHK Trading, Net Zero Group, Mancosa, Easy Talent Software, and Sanofi. Thank you so much. Thank you to our strategic partners. They are Prime Media Outdoor, British Chamber of Business, Southern Africa, to Bepesa, Black Umbrellas, Women in Mining, South Africa, and Simodisa. Thank you. Our lifestyle partners, Foschini, Elizabeth Arden, Parker, VIP Liquors, Free From Biscuits, Cape Island, Skin Creamery, Kulu Fine Wine, Jasmine Deco and Events, Aromatic Apothecary, and Sheila Afari PR. And our media partners, thank you so much, News 24, thank you, Farmers Weekly, and Business Tech Africa. These are the wonderful sponsors, and these are the partners that make this all possible. So we cannot say thank you enough. Once again, I want to greet on day 2 our virtual delegates that are joining us and have made sure that they've logged into our virtual event platform that is Hopin. We want to ensure that, like you were yesterday, you are fully a part of this wonderful experience today. Of course, there's a lot of giveaways throughout the day, and of course we want you to be a part of everything. Post your Q&As in the chat box and we will answer as many of those questions as possible. Our speakers, when they come out here, will answer those questions and we'll read out some of your comments as well. If at all you experience issues logging in, or if you need any information, please visit the registration desk at the entrance of the exhibition space for assistance. For those individuals, of course, that also want to make sure that they log in virtually. A lot of you were talking about the fantastic swag bags that you received, delegates. I know you love those. Again, today we're going to be having competitions throughout the day and for our virtual delegates as well, and giveaways. We want to say thank you for Sheeny for dressing our top woman staff once again today. And a big thank you as well to Avis for chauffeuring our VIP speakers and making sure that we all arrive here in style. Just going through social media again, you can find us on Instagram at SB Top Women Leaders, on Twitter or X, we are at SB Top Women, on Facebook, Standard Bank Top Women, on LinkedIn, Standard Bank Top Women, and all of our hashtags. There are so many for you to use. Hashtag SB Top Woman, hashtag Rise Above the Noise, and hashtag Topco Media, as well as hashtag Standard Bank. So make sure that you tag us on all the social media platforms when you're posting about the wonderful events throughout the day. When I spoke about the swag bags, which I mentioned yesterday, some people were like, wait a minute, where's mine? Those are of course, going to be given out at the end of the day today. All right, so before you leave, you'll get your wonderful swag bags. We are, of course, also going to be having the Q&A and network breaks where questions can actually be posed to all of our speakers after the panel sessions. All right, special announcement, Bongi Mpembe. Please, can you stand? Where's Bongi? Hi, Bongi. It's Bongi's birthday today. I just want to check. Anyone else? Okay, yes, please stand. Anyone else's birthday today? Or yesterday? Yes? Yeah? We hope you have an extra special day. Yeah? Enjoy. All right, for all of our speakers, when you guys come up here, we've got a monitor that's going to be having the time that is allocated. So make sure that you keep an eye on the time there, but I'll be doing the same so that we keep to the time for today's conference. Yesterday, we were trending. We knew that we would be. We were trending yesterday, so let's do it once again today. Let's tweet, let's post on the social networks, and let's talk about all of the excitement. Ready for day 2? I most certainly am ready. So let's get it started. Our first keynote speaker today, an individual that has obtained diverse exposure to banking, particularly when it comes to business and commercial banking. She undertook various roles within Standard Bank and was a key member of the team involved in re-establishing business banking in South Africa between 2009 and 2013, when she headed up business lending products as well as franchising and enterprise development. Please welcome to the stage Head Business and Commercial Banking SA, Standard Bank, Simone Cooper.
We all know being first is hard. From firstborn to first graduate, first one up in the morning to the first time school drop-off. Yeah, ne? First is hard, especially when you're your community's first mover. That's why we're putting first movers first, giving those who are shattering barriers the backing they need with Achiever, an offering that'll help them bank, borrow, save, insure, and enjoy great rewards to make their firsts last. Standard Bank.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, it's an honor to open the Top Women's event this morning. As a proudly African financial services organization, we believe that women's empowerment, especially across the financial services sector, and accelerating the growth of women-owned businesses is vital to unlocking Africa's economic future. Standard Bank's purpose is to drive Africa's growth, and our intention is to ensure that we drive sustainable and inclusive growth. Promoting women's rights and empowering them is key to supporting this purpose. We see gender equality not only as a fundamental human right, but also a business imperative. Speaking at the Inclusive Growth Summit earlier this year, Melinda Gates noted that the World Economic Forum indicates that achieving women's economic parity would add $12 trillion to the global economy. You might think that the magnitude of that number would mobilize massive resources to seize that opportunity. But in truth, as we know, the progress has been rather slow. By not empowering women fully, we are losing out on major economic growth and prosperity. Prosperity that is desperately needed today across the globe. Gates said that women are economic engines of growth. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away today, it should be that. Investing in women is good for families, communities, and economies, and pays dividends in terms of inclusive economic growth and human capital. There is an extensive body of research that shows that when women earn an income and control their earnings, their children are more likely to attend schools, their families are healthier, their self-worth improves, and their household incomes grow, along with that of the global economy. And for that to happen, what we really need to talk about is how do we assist women to harness their full power. This means having decision-making authority, having seats at the table, setting policy, having control of their finances, and the course of their lives. Empowering women is a catalyst for economic growth. The International Monetary Fund indicates that only 47% of women participate in labor markets, in contrast to 72% of men. Unjust laws, unequal access to services, biased attitudes, and additional obstacles hinder women from reaching their full economic capability, resulting in a startling underutilization of talent and consequent potential growth losses. The IMF estimates that emerging and developing economies could boost their GDP by about 8% over the next few years by raising the rate of female labor force participation by 5.9 percentage points. Certainly not an opportunity to be dismissed. The World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report for 2023 shows that Sub-Saharan Africa achieved a gender parity score of 68.2%. While this places it sixth Among the 8 global regions evaluated, we find a mosaic of experiences within Africa. Countries like Namibia, Rwanda, South Africa, and 13 others in the sub-Saharan region have taken commendable strides, surpassing the 70% gender gap closure mark. However, on the other end of the spectrum, there are many nations grappling with scores well below 62%. If we were to continue at our current pace, it would take us a staggering 102 years to achieve gender parity in sub-Saharan Africa. This isn't just a statistic, it's a call to action. Turning our gaze to the global stage, the labour market has shown signs of recovery for women, with a slight improvement from 63 to 64% in workforce parity between 2022 and 2023. Yet we must recognise that this progress still falls short of the heights achieved in 2009. Furthermore, while women represent 41.9% of the global workforce, they account for only 32.2% in senior leadership roles, and a mere 25% at the C-suite level, a disparity we must actively challenge. Another critical area demanding our attention is the STEM field. Although globally, women constitute half of the non-STEM workforce, their presence dwindles to a mere 29.2% within the STEM domain. We see promising female STEM graduates every year, but their retention after graduation dramatically drops, signaling a deeper systemic issue. Lastly, in this digital age, online learning platforms have revolutionized education, offering tailor-made learning opportunities. Yet, a vast disparity persists. Women globally, and potentially many in Africa, find themselves on the other side of a widening digital divide, limiting their access to crucial, future-centric skills. These findings are not mere numbers, they are a reflection of society's realities. It's a clarion call underscoring the urgent need for both private and public sector leaders to act. So as we stand here, let's remind ourselves that increasing women's economic participation and fostering gender parity in leadership roles isn't just a noble pursuit, it's a necessity for holistic societal advancement. Businesses experience numerous advantages from gender equity, including increased productivity and innovation, better customer service, enhanced reputation and brand value, decreased absenteeism and turnover, expanded access to new markets and talent, and robust financial performance. Standard Bank is committed to ensuring gender diversity and that we create spaces for women to flourish in the workplace and in the world of business. In 2018, we set ambitious targets for the representation of women in leadership positions, and we are certainly on track to achieve those targets. Our CEO, Sim Shabalala, highlighted that our approach focuses both on corporate culture as well as ensuring that we focus on the numbers. We are committed to ensuring that our corporate culture and expectations maintain dignity and respect differences. And as far as the numbers go at Standard Bank, 1/3 of our board members are women, including the chairman and the heads of our pay and audit committees. In addition, 1/4 of our main executive team are women, including roles such as our Chief Operating Officer and the head of our personal and private banking business. Overall, 34% of our top leaders, 42% of our senior managers, and 57% of all of our staff are women, with 44% of managers in revenue-generating functions. Our goal is a 50-50 gender split, not for the optics, but because it's right and good for our business. When human capital is more diverse and more representative, companies are more creative, more sustainable, and more profitable. Standard Bank has consistently been a staunch supporter and facilitator in the realm of female entrepreneurship, understanding the challenges and hurdles that women in business, especially from marginalized backgrounds, often encounter. Women entrepreneurs often find themselves facing obstacles in securing funding, mainly due to collateral requirements and a lack of financial literacy in managing balance sheets and understanding financials, which is a critical component in acquiring funds. In South Africa, the bank's Supplier Development Program aims to increase the participation of Black and especially women-owned SMEs within the bank's supply chain. The program uses two elements of the BBBEE and Financial Services Charter to advance economic inclusion. These are preferential procurement and supply development. Preferential procurement opportunities are identified in partnership with business units and segments as part of the annual planning cycle. This includes strategic partnerships through the bank's second-tier supplier relationships with strategic suppliers, including our technology partners. One of our successes emanating from this program is a 100% women-owned business, which we helped transition from being a toilet paper distributor to a toilet paper manufacturer. In the process, this business increased its turnover from approximately 800,000 Rand in 2018 to 46 million Rand in 2022, and with a projected turnover of 82 million for 2023. Another important initiative that Standard Bank has undertaken is the African Women's Impact Fund, or AWIF, which was established in 2020 with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and other partners, including the African Union. Gender stereotypes and racial biases in society yield negative global impacts, especially in the investment sector, by hindering female entrepreneurship, limiting women in leadership positions, and constraining the empowerment of female fund managers. Out of the 69.1 trillion in globally managed financial assets, women and people of color manage less than 1.3%. Moreover, a mere 7% of private equity and venture capital funding is devoted to businesses led by women in emerging markets. The AWIF initiative's primary purpose is to overcome the systemic barriers and investor biases in the asset management industry by enabling and promoting women-owned and women-led funds on the African continent. The initiative has a twofold agenda of making a commercial impact for investors while empowering women financial leaders to drive growth in Africa. With a bold ambition to raise up to $1 billion over 10 years for women fund managers, who will in turn invest in high-impact sectors and projects across Africa, this first-of-its-kind initiative is well-positioned to enable economic stimulus through sustainable and gender-inclusive capital growth opportunities. In 2022, the AWIF reached a $50 million allocation to accelerate the initiative's long-term ambitions. And this year, 3 women fund managers from Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa were selected to receive grant funding from the African Women Impact Fund Initiative. We believe this is an important step in empowering women entrepreneurs and especially in enabling African women access finance for their businesses. As we reflect upon the invaluable contributions of women to our society, our economies, and our businesses, it is imperative that we remember empowering women isn't merely about leveling the playing field or rectifying past injustices. It's about harnessing a wealth of talent, innovation, and potential that has long been underutilized. The task of gender equality is not just women's to bear. It's the responsibility of every individual, organization, and government to foster an environment where every person, regardless of gender, can thrive. Because when women rise, we all rise. When women succeed, our communities flourish, our businesses prosper, and our world moves forward. Let's not wait another 102 years for gender parity. Let us take bold steps today, because the promise of tomorrow lies in the choices we make now. I'd like to close with a quote from Michelle Obama. She said, "There is no limit to what we as women can accomplish." Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the day.
Thank you to Simone. She was here with us yesterday, and I'm hoping that you got an opportunity to catch up with her. That's what Standard Bank is all about. It's a bank that doesn't just talk about equality, that doesn't just talk about empowerment, but they are walking it, they are putting it into practice. So another round of applause for Standard Bank. Big highlights later on today. We'll be having our interactive workshop. So if you have signed up or registered for or are interested in supply chain and procurement, if you're looking to find out what it takes to be a part of a supplier development program, well, we'll have workshop 1, Women Rising Along Supply Chains, upstairs. So that's where you'll have to go later on for workshop number 1, Women Rising Along Supply Chains. Now, if you're interested in sustainable agriculture, we'll be looking at the transformative potential of agri-tech digitalization and this impact on women in agriculture and on the environment. So workshop 2, Women Leading the Way in Sustainable Agri-Innovation, will be downstairs here in the main auditorium. Of course, I'll announce when it is time for those workshops to take place, but major highlight that's coming up a little bit later on. Right now, let's have a conversation with a very powerful and inspirational woman. And she's going to be talking about climbing to new heights, both physically and figuratively. Please welcome to stage accidental mountaineer and Guinness World Record holder and author, Sarai Khumalo.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
You look amazing, right?
You are looking gorgeous today. Sarai, accidental mountaineer. What does that mean?
It's Sarah, by the way.
Sarah, yeah.
Yes, and accidental mountaineer because, you know, I didn't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm a mountaineer. It's not something that I grew up dreaming about, but something that came my way and I embraced it. It became important along the way, and I managed to break barriers that were important in that space.
Wow, okay, so by accident, and then you just thrived in it. It's interesting when you talk about breaking barriers. I know some of your highlights. 2019, you're on your 4th attempt, you summited Mount Everest.
Yes.
Now, what did those attempts teach you about resilience and about perseverance?
Well, summiting on a 4th attempt wasn't easy. Yeah, I had to dig deep. It was effectively about realizing that resilience is not just about bouncing back. It's really about not just surviving after bouncing back, but thriving after bouncing back. Wow. It's about learning from the experiences in order to, you know, to thrive. It also taught me that no one gets to the top on their own. Yeah. I had to embrace the fact that as much as I'm an overachiever, there are places where I needed collaboration. And also, effectively, to lean into my own strength. You know, when we are children, we always taught, if you're not good at maths, come on, get an extra teacher, you're going to be good. But the reality is you're going to be mediocre at best. But if you focused on your English, because you're amazing, you'll be the best poet the country will ever have. So it's realizing that my strengths were my superpower and going for that effectively. And more importantly, every summit is only a step away. So keep stepping.
Keep stepping, wow. I'm sure there were many times during your summit where you just thought, you know what, I am going to give up. Maybe you were encouraged to give up. How did you manage to rise above the naysayers and the doubts?
Yeah, so the doubts were there throughout. You know, when I rocked up on Everest the first time, the assumption was I'm black, I'm female, I must be going to Everest Base Camp. How dare I have the same ambitions as a white male rich, you know. Initially, I almost ignored it. I realized that they actually were serious. They honestly did not believe that I could actually be going to where they're dreaming of going. And along the way, I became very stubborn, and I decided I'll hear them, but I'll ignore them, because I wanted to believe in what I knew I could. Having been raised by a single mother, 7 girls, and she always said, you are enough.
Wow.
Never doubt yourself. Only you can stop yourself from going forward. It also goes back to, why did I start climbing? I started climbing because one little girl, after doing Kilimanjaro, which was a bucket list item, I'm hoping you've done that, we raised money for a home, and one kid said to me, do you really come from the township? And I remember thinking, well, this is probably a joke. And she says, no, people like us don't do things like this. Now, as a mother of 2 boys, I realized that she has a sense of self-disbelief, something that I probably also grew up with, thinking, there are these superheroes, we just applaud them, it's not us. And I made a conscious decision that, I'll climb the highest mountain on every continent, and use it to raise money for education, because the next generation of Africans cannot have a sense of self-disbelief. They are depending on us to break those barriers and show them that they too can, and that the sky is not the limit. Just because that's what we can see, we belong above the clouds. They must aim higher, because they've got unlimited potential, and it's up to us.
Yeah. Which township do you come from? Which township?
So I was raised in, it's also called Soweto, in Lusaka.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Round of applause. You've been celebrated for so many firsts, right? The first black African woman to summit Mount Everest.
Yeah.
To ski to the South Pole, to complete the 7 Summits Challenge.
Yes.
What is it that allowed you to succeed where others may have failed?
I don't believe others failed. Others were, what was important to them is other Everests that probably would scare me as well. I think what allowed me to succeed is a belief in self, refusing to accept that because of what I look like, where I come from, what the world believes on me, then I can't. And also being very clear about my why and my goal, and failing forward when it was time to kind of fall. More importantly, surrounding myself with the right people and saying goodbye to people that were no longer, or strategies that were no longer working for me on this, during this process. I think what is important, which we sometimes fail to do, especially women, we hang on to things that worked yesterday but are not working for us anymore. We all loved our grade 7 teachers, but we didn't take them to varsity, did we? We said thank you for the primary school, but we're moving on to high school and further on. I think it's realizing that the Sherpa that allowed me to go from Lukla, which is where you start climbing from, to Everest Base Camp, is no longer relevant when I'm going to the top of the world. And that's what made it possible for me.
What lessons can business leaders, because there's so many here, what lessons can business leaders learn from mountaineering?
A lot. The mountains have taught me, they changed how I lead, they changed how I look at life. Start with what is important to you. I think Simon Sinek puts it so well, start with your why. Because when the going is tough, you go back to that campus. Why is it important? And also realize that you're not great at everything, because you end up being mediocre. What are you good at? Stick to that. Partner with people that are great at stuff that you need during this process. And that becomes important. And even in business, be flexible. On the mountain, you don't know when the right summit window is going to be. You don't know who you are going to end up with and how you need to react in order to move forward. So you need to partner with the right people. So too is in business. Who are you hiring? Are they actually the right people? The next thing is, are you in that boardroom, are you the right person to move the business forward, or should you actually pull back and go back, another day in order for you to win? I think it's making those difficult but important decisions for your success. And for me, I believe that the combination of all those things make it possible for us to succeed on the mountain as well as out there. In business, yes, you lose money, but on the mountain, you actually can lose your life. So it's important to become intentional.
Some of the challenges that women of color, that yourself as well, have faced in the business world. What are those?
So in the business world, lack of representation. I think there's a lot of talk about diversity. We following the, the regulation that have been put up. But diversity sometimes is overrated. It's inclusion. Somebody said it so eloquently one day and said, it's okay if you are invited to the party, yes, it's diverse, but are they playing your music? And if they're not, then that is inclusion. It's not. So I believe that we need to be intentional in terms of the spaces that we are allowing people to come in to ensure that their ideas are heard. They're not just there to tick a box. To ensure that where we are, we're able to pull other people up. I wrote a book recently, and I ended up with, when you get to the top or when you get to the right place, push the ladder down and bring it up. Bring somebody else up with you. And that is important because the decisions that you make, you're no longer fighting for them on your own. You've got the right support. I experienced that in business. It's like that on the mountain. And the silly thing is, I've been to the top of the world. There's enough space for everyone in this room.
I love it that you say you're an accidental mountaineer, and I think there's just so many parallels, obviously, as a businesswoman as well, that you can draw from mountaineering. So taking that first step, if you find yourself with a possible opportunity and you accidentally find yourself in that space, talk about taking that first step and being brave to venture into this new world, into the business world, into mountaineering.
I think the courage to start. I mean, I now take women up Kilimanjaro, and one of the things that I ask them is, why? Why do you want to do it? I think if people decide, I want to do this, you need to understand, for you to support them, you need to understand why it's important, because those times when things are difficult, you need to remind them what is at stake. And I think that's quite important, whether it's in business or on the mountain. Because you find a lot of mountaineers that, maybe if I go back to Everest specifically, people die on their way down. Why? Because people get too excited about getting to the top, not realizing that's halfway. Oh, wow. Do you have what it takes to not just go up, but pass the baton to the next generation? I think that's important. And that's all about intergenerational wealth for people in finances. It's not about what I'm wearing, what I'm dressing today. Are your children going to be able to take that and level it further up?
You founded Summits with a Purpose.
Yes.
I love this initiative because it's raised funds, it's built physical and digital libraries in those underfunded African schools. What's the importance of promoting literacy on the continent?
I think literacy is not just important, it's an imperative. The UN says that Africa has the youngest population in the world. What do we want that generation, what position do we want them to be in when the world needs a leader? It's time for Africa. And it's up to us to make sure that is possible. And the baseline is education. It is the equalizer. It is that tool that will create a bridge between poverty and prosperity that we wish for Africa in the future. And I'm very passionate about education, and that's why I build libraries. Initially, I started, let me build library in Africa, in South Africa, I beg your pardon, but now I've got a dream to build at least one library in every country on the continent.
Okay.
And
Wow. Wow, wow. Is there an age limit? Is there a time limit to discovering your passion or discovering a new passion?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
If you're breathing, you can still find your passion. Just stay focused and ask yourself the right questions. When you are gone, what do you want them to say about you? What do you want to leave behind? What are you doing about it today to make sure that happens tomorrow when you're gone? And I think that's important. We all know that we're born and we're going to die one day. What are we doing with the time that we have in between? A good friend of mine that's here for like I once said, you need to be a VIP. Be visible, be intentional, and be present in every space that you find yourself in.
I'm going to remember that one. Wow. We've got a comment from Hop In. Manisha Pariachi says, no one is you, and that is your superpower. Rise up and shine, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And just to add to that, you know, we are all uniquely extraordinary, and being ordinary is a choice. It's when we want to be somebody else that we remain ordinary. Otherwise, we are all uniquely extraordinary. Own it, use it, believe it, and never give up.
Unbelievable. You've achieved so much as an accidental mountaineer. Can you imagine if it was intentional? It speaks to the tremendous power and ability that we all possess as women.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are powerful beyond measure.
Yes.
Somebody quoted, I think, Marianne Williamson. I think playing small does not save the world. It's time we owned it. Yes, I'm an accidental mountaineer, but when I found myself in the room, I made sure that it counted. I made sure that in future, when they see a black woman, or a woman for that matter, on those trails, they give them the same benefit of the doubt. They recognize that that powerful force is going to the top of the world, and they too belong, you know, above the clouds like anybody else around the world.
Yeah. How important is a conference like this? You know, a gathering of top women, of business leaders, not just women, we've got some men as well that are part of this conference. How important is it to have sessions like this, have discussions like this, and get the motivation from time to time that is needed?
I believe it's very important because we are underrepresented, and for that reason, we need to support each other. And this does exactly that. I think it's a powerful tool to network, a powerful tool for businesses to ensure that their products or their services are spoken about in rooms that they are not, and reciprocated. I think many times we want, but what are you giving back? So I think the onus is on each and every one of us to look at the next woman and say, what do you do? I'll talk about you in the next room where you are not.
Yeah, and we were saying it, network. It's so important. You know, yesterday with our networking sessions and our speed dating sessions as such, the feedback that we got is that in those sessions, everyone met an average of 4 new individuals, and they were introduced to 4 new businesses. And in turn, they did that as well, introduce themselves. So make full use of the opportunity of being a part of this conference and continuing to network. There'll be so many more opportunities to do that throughout the day. You've left us with so many nuggets already, but still early in the day, still lots of conversations and networking to continue. What would you like to say to all of our delegates?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation and the platform. I think believing in ourselves is key. We always talk about men are leading, they are in every boardroom, but the reality is we are the leaders. We carry the children for 9 months in our wombs. What changes when you get into the boardroom? Let's start owning the spaces that we are in because we belong there, and the world's progress is dependent on each and every one of us. Thank you.
Wow, Sarah, such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being here and for being an inspiration. Another big resounding round of applause.
Thank you.
As she takes her seat. Thank you. Very inspirational, right? This is what we love. Top woman. May you continue to prosper, Sarah, in everything that you do. Now, we're talking about rising above the noise and the fact that we live in a life that is full of so many distractions. Oftentimes, it can be really be difficult to focus on that ultimate goal and that ultimate plan. But what makes it easier is always knowing your reason, your why, your purpose. Let's talk a little bit about that and finding your place above the clouds. Our next speaker, absolutely inspirational. She is a philanthropist, a motivational speaker, a businesswoman. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Lynn Forbes.
Hi, how are you?
So good.
Yeah, I'm just going to stand on
perfect.
the stage. Good morning, everybody. I'm living my why right now on the stage, to be honest with you. I'm so honored to be here this morning to speak to all of you, because this is why I get up in the morning. This is what drives me, what makes me want to get out of bed, because my purpose that I will explain to you and my why has kind of unfolded over time. And why I call it the place above the clouds is like we've just heard, when you climb a mountain and you get to above the clouds, you view the world very differently. So one day I found myself on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, maybe not right at the top yet, but maybe on day 3, sitting at Horambo Hut, just above the clouds, and I thought, Lynn Forbes, you are a tiny speck in this world. Why are you here? What is your purpose, and why are you doing this? Now, for a while before that, actually for 38 years before that moment, where I was sitting right there above the clouds on a rock. I've got a beautiful picture of that. I'll show you one day when you come to my house. I was sitting there after 38 years of not knowing why, not understanding my higher purpose, but I did believe that I get up every morning for some reason, for my children, yeah? To put food on the table, to cook for my husband, to beautiful purpose. I mean, really important things, right? Because in my daily life, there were things that I needed to do, and I always believed those are my purpose, to be successful, to get a degree, and all of those important things of life, which I am absolutely, whoever is doing that, and we all do those things, those are important things of life. But there's something else, something that is not externally motivating, right? Something that comes from somewhere here in your stomach. And when I sat there on that rock, I look back over my life, 38 years of wanting to sit on this mountain, and I thought my reason for wanting to be there was because when I was a little girl, 11 years old, and I was sexually abused, at that time, I had this encyclopedia. And in this encyclopedia, there wasn't Google at that time. So I am actually quite old. So we didn't have Google at that time, and I looked at this encyclopedia and looking for an escape from this world that I didn't understand, because I never spoke to my parents or anybody about the sexual abuse I suffered at the hands of friends of my dad. And the encyclopedia became my escape. So I thought, I saw this mountain, and I saw this mountain sticking out above the clouds, And that became something that I wanted to do because it looked like a safe place. And I always thought one day I'm going to climb this mountain and I'm going to be above the clouds. And that's why when I speak about this, I call it the place above the clouds, my reason, my why. Now, what I want to talk about as well, and I just made a note of it, I somehow have realized, or I have accepted, that life happens. In business, in life, life happens. Life is not a bed of roses, right? And often bad things happen to us, which leaves us with a choice to either use these experiences to achieve a higher purpose and attain greater joy and fulfillment in life, or allow these bad experiences to consume and destroy us. And that sounds quite weighted, quite heavy, but that is the reality. And maybe for me, it is because what I found in my life is I went through that and a few other things in between. But that's not just my life. We all go through things every day. And recently I lost my son on the 10th of February to assassination. I lost him. He was shot in Durban. And again, I was faced with, why would I get out of bed in the morning? Why would I want to do that? And now 8 months later, I have again accepted that my purpose, my why, is not fueled by the pain, but I have found a way to turn my pain into purpose. So I speak about my childhood sexual abuse. I speak about losing my son in the most devastating, most painful way. But what we hear about, but what we are here for today is to decide, how does that happen? Because people often ask me, they say, how do you do what you do? How do you stand in front of people and tell them your most painful experiences? And what I've realized is that our why lies within us. It's not something for me that I have discovered. No, I actually have discovered or unpacked it maybe later on in life, but it's always there. We just don't always look deep enough, and often we try and find our reason and our why in external things. So what I wanted to say is we all have that higher purpose. And what I have found for myself is that if I look back at my life as a child and the type of child that I was, I've always told stories about my life. I loved writing, I liked journaling, and I loved asking questions. So even now, I ask myself questions all the time, and the questions are literally the same. And I think this is what I'm trying to say. Whether it's in your personal life or in your work situation, you have to constantly ask questions to yourself to discover what it is that you want in life, where you're going in life, and how you're going to find that answer. So for me, and I just want to pose these questions to you, what is your why? Now, we talk about this all the time. What is your why? But do we even know what that means? When somebody says, what is your purpose in life? Do we actually even know what that means? And some of the other questions I've written down is, what makes you get up in the morning? Where does it come from? That's something that drives you, that makes you want to show up for life, not for somebody else. What makes you want to show up for life every day? Where does that yearning, that that I want to do this, where does it come from? Where does it sit inside you? Because if it doesn't sit inside you and it comes and it's externally motivated, then maybe that's not where you should be looking for your purpose in life. It is an intrinsic motivation to get up every day and work towards fulfilling what you will then discover as your higher purpose. And I'll come back to just talking about that a little bit more. For me, and I believe, and I speak under correction, but for me, no matter what we do and what we believe our higher purpose is, our higher purpose is always connected. It's always service to others. If you think about it, when I went through childhood sexual abuse and I went through years and years of trying to understand this, and I thought I'll go to the mountain, and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, eventually summited. I did it for my 50th birthday in 2018. I stand at the summit. Before I get to the summit, as I start climbing, for a while I knew that I would make this, unless I obviously got medical complications and I couldn't anymore. I knew I would summit. From the start, I made a decision I would summit because I knew my why, and my reason was that was something I wanted to do and fulfill as a childhood dream. But once I came to day 3 of this climb and I'm standing above the clouds, something changes and I'm thinking, I need to reach the summit and then I have to get back down so that I can tell the story, so that other people can be inspired. And I want to make that impact. So now it shifts. Now it's not only about me anymore. The moment my purpose shifted from, I need to fulfill my childhood dream, I want to write a book about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which is still part of the inspiration. But once I got to what I want to do as Lynn Forbes, every day I want to get up and I want to know that today, and there's only one thing, today if I stand in front of a room of people, doesn't matter how many people there are, when I leave here, I want to touch one person. Only one. And I want that one person to think, this one thing that Lynn said today has changed my life, or made an impact, or has given me something to think about. So when I then left, because now I'm above the clouds, and once I've left and I've gone to summit, and I return, it's a very different approach and a very different view of what it is that I want to do with my life. So now, every day I get up, and even when my son died on the 10th of February, and I knew that I'm not the only person in pain, that I'm not the only person mourning, and that I had a responsibility towards not myself and my family, towards a nation, towards Africa, towards a continent, towards the world, to take his death and not take that as a personal thing only. It is personal, believe me. I'm a mom. I'm crying, snot and trana, at home, in my bed, on my floor, okay? So I miss my child terribly, but what I also know is that there are other people mourning. There are other people in this country of ours who have lost their child, and there's probably been hundreds of children that were lost since the 10th of February, but we don't know. Nobody talks about them. So I'll talk about them. Okay? So I need to take my pain, because I'm the only person who the newspapers are writing about and whose story is being told. And there are so many moms out there that are in so much pain, and if I don't come up here and talk about grief, and that's why I have other initiatives where I talk, where I have small groups. So a week after my son died, I was out there sharing my pain with groups of women that have gone through the same thing, because My purpose was clear. I understood my assignment. My assignment was clear, is that you have been put in this world to leave a legacy of inspiration, impact, and a legacy of love. And that is what I do every day of my life. Thank you. So, taking that then, because this is not about me. It's not about me. This is about the corporate world, the private world, where you are. And this is about each and in every individual here. And we've just heard in the previous address that everybody, this is not about a competition. This is about you, And if you then think about this for a moment, if we could just use the last couple of moments to talk about this, because I can stand up here and talk about my story and talk about what I've gone through in my life and how I've addressed it, and then people come up to me and they say, I can't do it. You are such a strong woman. And actually I'm not. I'm just a mom, really. I am not such a strong woman, but what I have clarity about is why I'm here. I'm not a strong woman. I have a granddaughter who's 8 years old. I have another son. I have normal family problems. I have normal human issues every single day of my life. And I'm not a superwoman either. I will probably go out that door just now and I will sit in the car and I'll sob my eyes out. I promise you, I do that because these sessions for me are quite emotional. Talking about these things are not easy, but I understand my assignment. So let us look at it and say, and that is my why. So I want us to look at it and say, what is your why? What is your why? And it is that thing that when you wake up in the morning that says, get out of bed because you're excited about it. Now, if we incorporate, people will say, yeah, but I just have to go to the office, I've got a job. But there's something there that you need to unpack, and that's something that you need to find, because your purpose, you don't just have a purpose, a higher purpose, if you've climbed mountains, right, Sarai? It's not just when you've climbed mountains that you can stand up here like us, or when you've lost your son, now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, now you can talk about this amazing purpose. No, it's devastating losing your child. It's the worst thing in the world. But even through that, you need to find what is that thing. And let's see if we can maybe, and now I can't, where's my thing? Okay. So let us look at what it is. So what have I done? I would like to leave maybe just a few things to think about. And again, I'm not trained for this. I'm talking from my own experiences. And I look back on my life of 55 years, and I look at what it is that I feel that has changed to get me to the point where I stood there above the clouds and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I'm here for. And since that day, I have lived that purpose. So it's not, I don't think it's discovering, yes it is. It's as I said, your purpose is there, you just need to find it. It's been there your whole life. I find that when I find moments of quiet and I reflect on my life, I love going out into nature. I love hiking. I love, just sitting next to a stream or just going for a hike and by myself, and I reflect. Or quiet time. I think quiet time gives us time to really understand what it is that moves us internally. I ask a lot of questions, not of other people only, but of myself. I write down, I do a lot of journaling. I feel like journaling is something that I write down things all the time, how it makes me feel. And then also internal discovery. I you need to find a way to connect with your inner self and spend time with yourself and block out the noise of the world. Switch off the phone and go through, and make notes of, for instance, when you feel joyful. What is it that makes you feel joyful? For me, this is joyful for me. I'm actually probably in the saddest time of my life right now. I don't think I've ever been in a more sad place. But when I stand up here, I'm feeling joyful because I can spend this time with you, and I trust and I believe that something I said would make a difference, and that is what I'm saying, is that you need to look sometimes past the noise and find what is that thing. So in the corporate world, in your office, there's probably a lot of noise, but why am I here? And how does what I'm doing today in this hour, in that minute, how does that contribute? How does this add? Do I make an impact in my little bubble? You don't need to be the CEO of the company. You can be making tea, but you're making an impact because somebody needs good tea. And if you can find the passion in what you're doing, it shows, and you make your little space a little bit more joyful for everybody else and yourself. So those are not a lot of things. I feel reflection, self-discovery, being hungry for knowledge about yourself, journaling, time with myself, and time in nature. Those are the things that I feel that I use to find the ongoing purpose of my life, because I don't think you also just arrive at a day, one day above the clouds and, my purpose has arrived above the clouds. No, your purpose can change also. So it's always being open to that and realizing that what I'm here for, I have value as a human being. You can't be on this earth. Nobody is here because they have zero value. You have value. You are important. You are worthy. And you can make a huge impact and a huge difference. Thank you.
Wow, Lynn, you are such an inspiration. Another powerful top woman reminding us about finding our purpose and our place in the clouds and rising above the noise. You've got a comment from our virtual audience on Hop-In. Elsa Rapudi saying, absolutely, we go through so much in life. Life happens, but we have to stand up living our purposeful life. Thank you so much, Lynn. Let's now discuss digital innovation and financing for women's economic empowerment. Please welcome my panelists up here on stage. Head of Investments at Standard Bank South Africa, Thandi Ngwane is here. Come on up, Thandi. We've got the chair of Deloitte Africa, Delia Ndlovu, here with us today. Executive Director at Outvest Credit Opportunities Fund, ACOF, Tatum Wheatley Cashwa, here with us today. And the country head at Visa, Lineshri Moodley, is here with us as well. And we'd like to say a big, big thanks to Visa for making this conversation possible. Round of applause for Visa. Let's start off with Visa. Lineshri, good to see you here today. So we're looking at estimates from UN Women that globally, women only make 77 cents for every dollar that is earned by men. So can you talk about how digital transformation can enable women's economic empowerment?
Sure. So good morning, and thank you for having me on the panel. I think it's really important to talk about how we enable women for economic empowerment. I think let's start by talking about some of the barriers that we see women facing and then how digital, actually enables them. The first one is access to good quality education. And I think this differs by region, especially when you get into where does gender parity play. I think the second one is access to financial and digital services. And this one is particularly important because we know that when we include people into a digital ecosystem, they grow. So, they grow, their families grow, societies grow, the economies grow. The second one is restricted opportunity in terms of jobs. And this could be because of a lack of access to suitable employment. The second one there could be just societal norms and, women not being able to work. And the last one, to your point, is definitely there is a huge gap when we look at pay. I mean, 77 cents for every dollar earned by a man. We have work to do. So when we look at digital and how it plays a role, when we look at it from an educational perspective, you can look at things like online training, virtual webinars, where women don't physically need to go out. They don't need to travel, but they can get access to this online. I mentioned before, providing access to financial services. The World Bank states that we see more financial inclusion for women when we enable things like mobile money, digital wallets, and I think also providing access to digital platforms like e-commerce, where you can start up businesses, etc. From a Visa perspective, including more people into the digital ecosystem is core to our purpose. It's something we are passionate about. And we also recognize, and I think Simone said this earlier when she spoke, being included in an ecosystem is not a privilege. It's a fundamental right. And so we need to get behind it. And from a Visa perspective, we invest in that. One of the examples I'll mention before I stop on this point is we actually allocated $5 million to invest across Africa for initiatives specifically for women to create impact and bring them into the digital ecosystem where, we can start having these conversations and impact when it comes to economic empowerment.
Wow, wow. Round of applause, Visa, wow. Tatum, can you talk to us about how it is that about how it is that that women's economic empowerment impacts on gender equality?
Absolutely. Thank you, Carol. It's lovely to see you. Good morning, ladies. And it's a wonderful privilege to be sitting on a panel with such esteemed women. So thank you for the opportunity, Standard Bank. Carol, I recently came across a very interesting stat about women entrepreneurs. And the stat goes like this. 90% of a woman's accessible income is reinvested into her children, their healthcare, their education, and the community in which she works and operates. 90%. That is a phenomenal stat. That means that in order for South Africa to experience the economic upliftment we need to have, we need to empower women. Economic empowerment for women is an imperative because it allows her to make decisions about her life with confidence. And these decisions are not based on the skews and imbalances of society and gender inequalities. It means that she's able to focus, she's able to silence that noise that we've been talking about, and she's able to focus on a more quality of life. So giving women access to resources, to the kind of funding they need as entrepreneurs, means that the economy is going to experience the kind of boost that it needs right now. And being South Africans, we know we are experiencing this on a daily basis. So this really is an imperative.
It certainly is. Thandi, Tatum talking about access to resources, and estimates from the IMF show that only 37% of women in sub-Saharan Africa have a bank account. So how can we improve the number of women who have access to financial products?
Carol, thank you so much, and good morning, ladies. It's wonderful to be here. Carol, that's such a sobering statistic for me, to think that a little over a third of women in sub-Saharan Africa have a bank account in this day and age. But it is the reality. And maybe if I can just spotlight South Africa for a second, if you think of financial inclusion in South Africa, and you read the statistics and the number of reports, it actually looks like we're in a very good position. So depending on the report, one of the most recent ones was published in July this year by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and they really looked at customer behavioral sentiment. And that survey actually puts the statistic in South Africa of financial inclusion at 98%, right? So if you contrast that to what you're saying. So that means, just 2% of South African adults do not have access to a financial product or service. And mind you, that number is up 6% since 2021. But I think despite the high levels of inclusion, what we often don't see are what's shielded by the nuances, especially experienced by vulnerable groups, which includes all of us as women.
Yes.
And I think that is really the challenge. I think it's been spoken about what some of the barriers are and what women cite as some of these barriers to access. And we know often it's things like financial products and services are not tailored to suit my needs. So I would say one of the ways that we can improve access is to think about how we solve for needs across the value chain, and to understand that actually access doesn't start when a woman wants to open a bank account or an investment. It starts at product development. So when you are formulating your solutions as financial services businesses like Standard Bank, are we thinking of women in that process? And I think, Carol, the other points around improving access come back to financial education. So, in having the conversation with women in terms of what the suitability is around a product, how does it meet my financial needs, and understanding that as women, it's been said throughout the day, but as women, we exist in all facets of this economy. So how do you solve for me as a housewife, as an entrepreneur, as somebody in corporate? Because my needs are going to be different. So we need to be thinking about those access points and how we actually educate women.
Oh, yes. Delia, let's talk about the global estimates by Deloitte, estimating that women fill around a quarter of leadership roles at financial services firms. So what is gender parity when you look at the financial sector like in South Africa, and how can we improve it?
Yeah. Firstly, let me say that it's a privilege to be here whenever I have an opportunity to be part of a conversation that puts women and girls at the center of economies. To me, that gives me hope that we will get to sustainable development outcomes. So to your question, we know that the stats of women board representation, for example, hovers around 29% in South Africa, and it's not that much different across the world. And you've heard of the 30% club. I think 30% is way too low. We need to aim higher for women, to have equal representation. So at Deloitte, for example, Deloitte Africa, I'm the Africa chair. We've got an Africa CEO. And what we see is when you've got women at the helm, the composition of their leadership team starts to change. So, for example, when I took over, our board was 38% women representation. We moved it to 60% women representation. When Ruwaida, our CEO, took over, she also did a similar sort of thing. Immediately upon her taking over, she moved it from 30% women representation on her ExCo, it's now 42%. You see this across the world of Deloitte, at least that's my reference point. Our global chair took over a board that was 16% women represented, and it moved over to 40% at this point. The same in the US. It's now 50% women representation because a woman is in charge. So whenever a woman is in charge, something phenomenal, magic happens from a point of view of them being conscious and being purpose-driven about making sure that women are properly represented. But representation by itself is not enough. It's diversity, so it's good to have boards that are demographically and cognitively diverse, but you need inclusion. So once they're around the table, what do you do with them? For me, diversity is like being invited to a party, but then when you're at the party, you need to dance. That's inclusion. So we need to make sure that we have leaders that are conscious, that when you're around the table, those women have got a voice. So I went into rabbit holes, but the point I'm trying to make is that women representation matters, but it needs to come with inclusion. It takes leadership to be intentional, be committed, show courage, set your targets, yes, you can, but you also need to make sure that you've got leaders that recognize the dreams of the women, recognize their bold visions, and then support them. Support them with mentoring, with sponsorship, and have the men be our allies. Help to support, driving women empowerment.
Wow. And with more representation and more women empowerment at Deloitte, you saw more success, right? That made a difference.
Yeah. Of course, it leads to more financial performance.
Love it. Lineshri, what are some of the barriers that digital transformation can remove for women?
Sure. So I think I mentioned some of the barriers when I opened. So I'll talk about probably 3 things here. So the first one is financial literacy and education, which is really critical as we want to include more women into the ecosystem and economically empower them. We've got to be able to create reach. And so I think from a digital perspective, where it's online courses, it's webinars, it's platforms that you can create, we all as an ecosystem need to come together to actually enable it, across multiple industries. The second one is providing access to digital payments. Things like mobile money, things like wallets, actually are a start to get women included into the ecosystem. And once you can see how they're transacting, how they're spending, what they're paying for, that provides access to data. And that data is powerful because then it leads on to give you a view of how can I extend microloans, or how can I extend loans to, micro businesses to help them grow. And you just think about our economy, right? And the number of small businesses that are really the lifeblood of this economy. And if we can get more people in, then we actually empower them to know, how do I run my business? How do I manage my finances? And I mean, one of the key programs we run globally from a visa perspective is we have a partnership with Kiva. And we allocate $50 to every employee globally to actually contribute to women-owned businesses. And these businesses could be, someone sitting in Ghana that's buying material to sew dresses, and, enabling her to buy more stock. And these types of programs create impact, right? Because, you're improving her quality of life, there's more funding, there's more access, grow their families, and, ultimately grow society. And the third one is, providing digital technologies in the form of platforms. So something like e-commerce, where, a lot of women can start up businesses online. And, you're able to sell products. You're even able to reach consumers globally. And this really provides a balance to enable you to, manage your career, manage your family, and on your own terms, and with the flexibility that comes with it. So this is how I believe digital will really assist in bringing more women into the ecosystem.
Oh yes, oh yes. I want to comment from all of you here, and I'll start off with you, Thandi, just talking about only 54% of women of working age in South Africa participate in the labor force. So how has digital transformation enabled employability, especially amongst women?
Carol, I think if you think of the gender finance gap, we spoke a little bit about access earlier, and I think you've really articulated well some of the barriers, and I think one of the key barriers is exactly what you mentioned right now. Yeah. The fact that as women, we're not only underrepresented in the workplace, but our workplace participation is at extremely low levels. And if you look at it, a lot of women are actually employed in the informal sector. And I think that's where part of the role of digital transformation comes in. So if you look at women in the informal sector, what we should actually be doing is looking at enabling mechanisms, particularly through digital, whether it's starting businesses online, whether it's initiatives to educate. From a Standard Bank perspective, for instance, one of the initiatives we run for women entrepreneurs is a masterclass. So for women who are entrepreneurs, regardless of whether you're starting out or you have a track record, you'd be surprised at how useful information such as managing your cash flow is, or understanding how to source your suppliers adequately. So I think that's the role of digital, particularly in an environment like that. And I think one of the things that we can do, particularly where you're finding a large number of women employed in the informal sector, is we actually should be looking at policies of how we formalize roles in the informal sector. I mean, having come out of COVID, for instance, we can see that, the disproportionate impact on women, particularly in the informal sector, has been huge. It's been massive. And so, again, through the use of digital, whether it's webinars to educate women, I think that's load shedding. And the reason why this becomes important is also from an economic perspective. So we know that in countries, for instance, where there is a narrow gender gap, those countries tend to have a high GDP. So if you're looking at economies, particularly where we've experienced lower GDP rates, of course, having a diverse workforce and being more inclusive of women is what changes that and has the ability to boost even economies.
Mm-hmm. Tatum?
This digital transformation has allowed businesses to kind of show their sense of agility. We take a look at the period of COVID where, you were either going to adapt or die. Yeah. 34% of SMEs within Africa are women-led, and this is higher than the global norm. So what we're seeing here is that women are actually not being left behind within Africa because it's higher than the global norm. What we need to encourage is access. As much as we speak about the informal sector, we say informal in inverted commas because it may look to the outside as if it's disorganized, but it is highly organized and highly generating. The digital regeneration has allowed the informal sector to keep up and to be able to adapt within these times. So what we actually need to do is we need to allow the informal sector access to non-traditional funding, and this is what ACOF, Office Credit Opportunities, is about. We are allowing access to what would be regarded as non-traditional so that businesses and SMEs are able to grow and adapt.
Wow. Dile, can you talk about that?
Yeah, interesting what's being spoken about, especially the reference to the informal sector. To me, I want to link that to the importance of making sure that even in our schools, digital literacy and financial literacy is emphasized. I've been enthused and excited, about stories of women such as Pelonomi Muilwa, who recently was in the front pages of the Times. She's talking about how generative AI can transform the lives of women. And what she's trying to do is that a lot of the AI tools are in English. And she's saying she wants to do a tool that can be in vernacular, all the languages across Africa. That is transformative. And that's going to be, give and enable women to do what they need to do in their languages. They don't have to necessarily be articulate and eloquent in English to be able to run businesses, using a tool, an AI tool that can empower them to do what they need to do. So she's very impressive. There is also a group of women that helps children with building robots. They're called Girl Code. That's pretty impressive. I met them at the Africa Children Feeding Scheme, where they're in Soweto, in the various centers. After school, children get to the centers and they learn how to build robots. I think that is transformational.
Wow.
So I recently attended a Department of Innovation and Science, where women were being supported by the department, and it was all women on stage talking about how they're taking advantage of the low carbon economy that is emerging, how to generate power from biomass and all sorts, the renewable energy economy that's emerging. It's powerful stuff, and it's very encouraging. But I just wanted to say that, from a Deloitte perspective, we've got a department that helps women with accessing funding from the National Empowerment Fund, the Black Millionaires, a Billionaires Fund from the Department of Trade and Industry. And what we've seen with taking women on that journey, it's been very interesting to see how they're starting to build businesses in, the tech industry, coming up with innovative and creative ways of making payments, fintech, and then creating employment for other women. So it's fascinating to watch. And then being able to help them with being prepared from a business planning perspective so that the applications can be successful is good to see. We also have a program in Deloitte, for example, where if you're an employee and you've got a technology idea or any innovative idea, we help you build it within Deloitte while you're working for us so that you don't leave us. So for us, it's a retention tool. But what happens is we see you through the journey so that one day you end up leaving us and creating more jobs. So that's the idea. It's called the GIGS program. So I can go on. We've got an ESD program where we see women doing fascinating things, working with us on projects, digital transformation projects, changing lives.
Yeah, Linesri, you spoke about some of those wonderful programs, of course, at Visa. Tell us more examples where we're seeing Visa contributing to the empowerment of women for meaningful participation in the economy.
Sure. So, maybe I'll mention a couple more. So, we have a program called She's Next, and last year we actually collaborated in market with Standard Bank. But really what this program seeks to do is we go out and we look for women-owned small businesses, and, we provide them access to grants. We provide coaching, and financial sort of training in terms of how to grow, how to scale, how to manage your business. And the last part is also about providing a network. So as we provide networks for women, we hear each other, we hear about our successes, our failures, and we become more confident to try things. So She's Next is one of the initiatives we're putting money behind. I spoke about Kiva earlier. We recently had the FIFA Women's World Cup. And we gave away, I think, over $500,000 to small women-owned businesses. So every time there was a win by our team, there was, a grant that was made. So that's one of the ways. In the DRC, we are partnering there to help women with disabilities. So there's a lot of programs across Africa that we're getting involved in. As I mentioned earlier, we know that when we digitally transform and include people in the ecosystem, their lives improve, and hence society and communities also improve. So we really get behind, looking at where the meaningful initiatives and impacts that we can get behind.
Yeah.
I think I couldn't agree more. For me, I just wanted to say that we often talk about giving people access to funding. It's critical. It's vital, but I think it's also important to look at the aspect of giving them access to customers, opening up those supply chains and procurement processes within companies. For example, we are working with the presidency at the moment and looking at how can we approach companies, industry by industry, and asking the question around what percentage of women-owned business are you supporting, are your suppliers, and having an index that actually looks at that, and we monitor that every year to ensure that the companies and businesses like ourselves are held to account to ensure that we support women-owned businesses.
We're almost going to wrap shortly, Thandi, but I want to ask you how it is that public and private sectors can collaborate to drive investment in digital payment solutions and to advance women empowerment.
Carol, thank you. I think that's such an important question because often I think emphasis is placed on the private sector to be driving this, but actually where the true change and the impact comes is through the collaboration. And perhaps an example I can cite, which also maybe might emphasize the last point that you just made, Delia, is the fact that, we've got an initiative that looks at women asset managers on the continent. Now, we know that many of us as women might have investments, but the individuals making the investment decisions at the end of the day tend to be our male counterparts. So this particular fund is a collaboration. It's a collaboration between Standard Bank, the UN Economic Commission for Africa and their partners, as well as participants such as USAID and MEDA investors. And I think this is where the collaboration comes into play. And it really looks at how we accelerate the participation of women in making those financial decisions. And why that becomes important is that we know that there's a plethora of women asset managers on the continent, but capital raising is a problem. So how do I access my clients, as you say? How do I raise funds that will generate enough of an interest and stake my claim as a credible asset manager? So I think initiatives such as that really highlight the importance of the collaboration and really focus on some of the sustainable development goals, such as SDG 5, which looks at the promotion and equality of women and girls, but also how we create decent work opportunities for us as women.
Love it. We've got some questions on Hop In. Lumac, thank you so much for your involvement. Here's a question, Tatum. Intellectual property and ownership are a problem. How can we ensure that women are not exploited?
I think what's important is access not just to funding, as we've spoken about, but access to resource, access to upskilling, It's one thing being able to have a seat at the table, but once you're there, do you have all the tools and the toolkit basically needed to engage on a level that is going to be beneficial to who you are, to the community that you're engaging in? So what's really important is having access to resource so that we can say, the kind of delivery we are giving is of that standard, worthy of engagement.
Yeah. And another comment as well, Lumac saying, so glad about opportunities for women with disabilities as well. That's another comment on Hop In. All right, let's wrap up this panel discussion. A closing comment from you, please, Lineshri.
Sure. So, look, I think we talked about a lot here today. For me, it's important that we take the responsibility. It's on us. You know, as women leaders, as, you know, people coming from different corporates, from different industries, that we collaborate and we make conscious effort to actually drive inclusion for women in the ecosystem. I'm going to borrow from a speech my daughter actually wrote about 2 months ago. And it was during the time of Women's Day, and so she was writing as a 10-year-old what it meant to her. You know, to be a woman. But she used a quote from Michelle Obama that said, every girl, irrespective of her background, deserves the opportunity to realize her full potential. And it's up to us today to create those opportunities, you know, for the next generation of leaders, for the next generation of girls that are coming, you know, and irrespective of what they choose to do, you know, whether it's in academics or corporate or businesses, but to create the opportunities for them so that they can grow. And I think the last point for me is what is really critical as we think about digital transformation is how do we underpin that with education? I think you mentioned it as well. It's not just about, you know, providing the funding, but it's about how do we educate so that, you know, it's not just for now that the money is going to work, but it's for a sustainable future.
Davy Moodley saying 100% correct. Definitely need access to customers as we can't compete with the private sector. I'm an online entrepreneur. Products and solutions are available online. Closing comment, please, Thandi.
Thanks, Carol. I think, you know, in order to equip women to participate fully in the economy, it starts with ensuring that every young girl is in school and stays in school. We've seen the incredibly high statistics around teenage pregnancy and what that means for young girls dropping out of the education system. And then I think, just to read what's been said, each of us has got a role to play in the spaces that we occupy. So these policies around flexible work norms, ensuring that policies around retirement, medical, maternity benefits stay in place remains critical. It's important. We need to be driving that. And we also need to be driving and correcting this gender imbalance and that really means that it's incumbent on each of us to be playing a role in terms of setting those targets and making sure that the gender equality materializes.
Okay.
Very true. I couldn't agree more. So for me, you know, that when you look at the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, the fifth one, as you mentioned, is gender equality. But before that, you've got poverty, eradicating poverty, hunger, and so on. But I don't think you can eradicate poverty until women are empowered. That is my fundamental belief. So even though, you know, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are mutually reinforcing, they are coherent, but for me, the important one is empower the women, and you'll see economies transform. But just a parting shot is I couldn't emphasize more, like you said, the importance of mentors, surrounding yourself with mentors, coaches. It helped my career, and sponsors, those people that will be around the table and speaking for you when you're not there. And I love your word of opportunity. Sometimes the difference between us and men is just being given that opportunity. So, and lastly, just to say that, you know, when you stop dreaming, you're dying. So I think it's incumbent upon each one of us to pay it forward as leaders, all of us in the room, and to give our children, the next generation, a reason to believe and to give them hope, believe in their dreams, and keep them dreaming. That's it.
Thank you. Tatum.
I mean, amazing points, and I think that we have covered most of it. But I would have to echo what all of these wonderful women have said. The onus is absolutely on us. Women feel empowered when they have access, and we know that women are the future to mobilizing South Africa and boosting the economy. So having access, feeling confident in ourselves, taking the onus upon ourselves to know that I can do this. The environment is improving around me for me to be able to be a success, and the importance of paying it forward so that we can see the benefit of our work in generations to come.
What a fantastic panel discussion. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you. Another round of applause for all of our panelists here and their comments today. Thank you so much. All right, here we go. Major highlight today now. It's time for our interactive workshops. So, if you are interested in supply chain and procurement, if you're looking to find out what it takes to be a part of a supplier development program, then you will be headed upstairs where we'll be having workshop number 1, Women Rising Along Supply Chains. If you're interested in sustainable agriculture, looking at the transformative potential of agri-tech digitalization and its impact on women in agriculture and on the environment, then remain here downstairs in the main auditorium for workshop number 2. And the topic here is Women Leading the Way in Sustainable Agri-Innovation. So after our workshops, we'll be having a quick refreshment break. Please note that there is an issue with the bathrooms at the moment. We are working on rectifying that. So hopefully by the time we get to the refreshment break, everything will be sorted out. So we'll see you after the refreshment break at 11:40 to continue with the program. So can you all stand if you're going to workshop number 1, Women Rising Along Supply Chains, and please go upstairs for that particular workshop.
So all the ladies are asking, what about
All right, so at the moment we've got 2 workshops that are going to be taking place. 2 workshops. And I can see a lot of you are going up now for the first workshop. The second workshop takes place here. So remain here if you are interested in workshop number 2. So we're only having 2 workshops at this moment. Thank you. All right, we're ready to begin workshop number 2 here. So please welcome on stage your facilitator, Nikki Newman, who's head of agribusiness platforms and innovation at the Standard Bank Group. And our speakers, oh wait, you'll introduce the speakers, yes?
No, you go first.
I'll introduce the speakers. Okay, let me introduce the speakers up on stage as you take your seats here for workshop number 2 and get ready for that. So I just wanted to double check. Everyone here now is here for workshop number 2, yes? Yes. All right, can you take your seats so we can begin? And you can come a little bit closer as well. So ladies, can you all take your seats? All right, so we're starting workshop number 2. Okay, so can everyone take their seats so we can start workshop number 2? Let's welcome our speakers on stage. We've got Kunti Rabupala, Managing Director at Kinogata Farms. Please come on up. Program Specialist at UN Women, Ayanda Mvimbi, coming up on stage. Agricultural Economist and Disaster Manager at Agri-SA, Shanae Rudolph, also joining us. And Executive Chemicals, Agriculture, Food and Health from CSIR Group, Rachel Chikwamba. Welcome. All right, so we're starting our second workshop. Please take your seats, ladies. And we're going to be closing the doors as well so that we can get underway with this exciting discussion. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I love the excitement and energy in the room, and that it's hard to contain the energy, so thank you.
When you're speaking, you need to switch everything on.
Sorry? No, he said. Just good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm very privileged to be leading this panel and facilitating this panel with my esteemed panelists today, and very excited to share with you a slightly different theme from what we've seen in the programs this far, and particularly talking about agriculture, sustainability, and the role that women play in the sector. Now, it may seem surprising for those who have not really worked within the agricultural sector, the relevance of this industry for each one of us and for each one of us as consumers and human beings. So I'm going to take us through some of the industry and the sector stats and where we stand as a sector. And then I'd like to break into a Q&A and panelist discussion. So please make sure you've got your questions handy. We will be roaming around with a mic. So please feel free to ask questions to the panelists or myself towards the end. So starting off with this topic of women leading the way in agriculture and tying it to the theme of sustainability. So really somber statistics, but they're extremely important for us as an organization and as each individual for us to understand and for us to take in. 349 million people globally are facing acute food insecurity. That means that they are not able to find their next meal, and it actually impacts their health and well-being. It's beyond just hunger. It's true insecurity. And 140 million of those are on the African continent. And so if that alone doesn't make us sit up and say, what are we doing about it? What are we doing within our organizations and as women in the sector? I don't know what will. So I think the important point here is that we know in the context of Africa that we are poised to be the breadbasket of the world. Yet we sit with statistics, inefficiencies, and a food system that requires innovation and a new way of thinking. 9.7 billion people, that's the predicted growth rate by 2050. If we're already in a state of food insecurity, what will that mean by 2050 when we need to feed 9.7 billion people? It costs, on top of it, it costs Africa a huge amount of money, food insecurity. We're importing $64.5 billion of food. Yet we, from an agricultural perspective, are poised to be the breadbasket where we can grow staples such as wheat, sorghum, rice, beef. Yet there is this huge imbalance between what's possible and what is. And that prediction for that, the imports is only set to grow, along with population growth in at least 8 African countries. And that growth could reach $110 billion. So from an economic GDP perspective, from a social perspective, agriculture should be on every one of our minds in our organizations, from supply chains to financiers to development organizations. It is entirely relevant for this forum. What it requires for us going forward and in the future, and what it requires from each one of us as leaders and women in business, is for us to build this partnership ecosystem approach to how we solve for some of these systemic challenges. I haven't even started on the challenges that women individually face in a traditionally male-dominated industry. And on that note, it makes me very proud to sit up here with a full women panel with the topic of agriculture. It's not something you see often. And so really what that positions for us is that it's an opportunity for us to rethink the food system and our role as women and businesses in this space. I'm going to pause for a video for a moment, and then I'm going to come back to the topic.
About 10,000 years ago, humans began to farm. This agricultural revolution was a turning point in our history that enabled people to settle, build, and create. In short, agriculture enabled the existence of civilization. Today, approximately 40% of our planet is farmland. Spread all over the world, these agricultural lands are the pieces to a global puzzle we are all facing. In the future, how can we feed every member of a growing population a healthy diet? Meeting this goal will require nothing short of a second agricultural revolution. The first agricultural revolution was characterized by expansion and exploitation, feeding people at the expense of forests, wildlife, and water, and destabilizing the climate in the process. That's not an option the next time around. Agriculture depends on a stable climate, with predictable seasons and weather patterns. This means we can't keep expanding our agricultural lands, because doing so will undermine the environmental conditions that make agriculture possible in the first place. Instead, the next agricultural revolution will have to increase the output of our existing farmland for the long term, while protecting biodiversity, conserving water, and reducing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So what will the future farms look like? This drone is part of a fleet that monitors the crops below. The farm may look haphazard, but it's a delicately engineered use of the land that intertwines crops and livestock with wild habitats. Conventional farming methods cleared large swathes of land and planted them with a single crop, eradicating wildlife and emitting huge amounts of greenhouse gases in the process. This approach aims to correct that damage. Meanwhile, moving among the crops, teams of field robots apply fertilizer in targeted doses. Inside the soil, hundreds of sensors gather data on nutrients and water levels. This information reduces unnecessary water use and tells farmers where they should apply more and less fertilizer, instead of causing pollution by showering it across the whole farm. But the farms of the future won't be all sensors and robots. These technologies are designed to help us produce food in a way that works with the environment rather than against it, taking into account the nuances of local ecosystems. Lower cost agricultural practices can also serve those same goals and are much more accessible to many farmers. In fact, many such practices are already in use today and stand to have an increasingly large impact as more farmers adopt them. In Costa Rica, farmers have intertwined farmland with tropical habitat so successfully that they've significantly contributed to doubling the country's forest cover. This provides food and habitat for wildlife, as well as natural pollination and pest control from the birds and insects these farms attract, producing food while restoring the planet. In the United States, ranchers are raising cattle on grasslands composed of native species, generating a valuable protein source using production methods that store carbon and protect biodiversity. In Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Nepal, new approaches to rice production may dramatically decrease greenhouse gas emissions in the future. Rice is a staple food for 3 billion people, and the main source of livelihood for millions of households. More than 90% of rice is grown in flooded paddies, which use a lot of water and release 11% of annual methane emissions, which accounts for 1 to 2% of total annual greenhouse gas emissions globally. By experimenting with new strains of rice, irrigating less, and adopting less labor-intensive ways of planting seeds, farmers in these countries have already increased their incomes and crop yields while cutting down on greenhouse gas emissions. In Zambia, numerous organizations are investing in locally specific methods to improve crop production, reduce forest loss, and improve livelihoods for local farmers. These efforts are projected to increase crop yield by almost a quarter over the next few decades. If combined with methods to combat deforestation in the region, they could move the country toward a resilient, climate-focused agricultural sector. And in India, where up to 40% of post-harvest food is lost or wasted due to poor infrastructure, farmers have already started to implement solar-powered cold storage capsules that help thousands of rural farmers preserve their produce and become a viable part of the supply chain. It will take all of these methods, from the most high-tech to the lowest cost, to revolutionize farming. High-tech interventions stand to amplify climate and conservation-oriented approaches to farming, and large producers will need to invest in implementing these technologies. Meanwhile, we'll have to expand access to the lower-cost methods for smaller-scale farmers. This vision of future farming will also require a global shift toward more plant-based diets and huge reductions in food loss and waste, both of which will reduce pressure on the land and allow farmers to do more with what they have available. If we optimize food production, both on land and sea, we can feed humanity within the environmental limits of the Earth. But there's a very small margin of error, and it will take unprecedented global cooperation and coordination of the agricultural lands we have today. An agricultural revolution can start with you. Join Countdown.
So I think some of those, why I wanted to share that was to show what's happening around the globe. Sorry, I want to get around here, but what's happening around the globe. How does technology, how does sustainability, how does the role of women and agriculture and business come together for us to drive this change and shift that we need in our food system? So one takeaway I'd like for us to continue the discussion on today is around this important role not only of the large commercial farmer and farmers who are producing at mass scale, but also that important role mentioned around the smallholder farmer. So within that, the smallholder farmer and the role of women cannot be understated. We have about 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide who grow about a third of our food. Now, a large portion of these farmers are not structured, not connected to supply chains, don't have access to financial services, don't have equipment and mechanization to help them be more efficient. So it really is a difficult, puts women and small farmers in a very difficult position to remain competitive and keep up with the global environment that we see in agriculture. For example, we've seen in the last year or two the huge pressure that's come from the supply chain disruptions, soaring input costs and fertilizer costs, soaring costs for energy and production, and it really has put even the largest commercial farmer who has volumes and economy of scale under pressure. So how do we support these smallholder farmers is one of the questions I'm going to break away with to our panelists. What is the role of technology, innovation, and how we think about it? So an important point is that also agriculture is one of the biggest employers of women in the world. So it really puts us in a great position to say, well, how do we bring women into the sector, enable them as small, medium businesses, and grow them from there on out? So an important point to share as well is that sustainable agri-innovation is not only tied to the environment. It's a key pillar of how we build the future of agriculture and our food system. But it's also around how we operate as businesses, education. I heard in the panel earlier around how do we create knowledge and education around farming, business practices. How do we bring in technology, digitization, and data, and enable those access to services. And on top of it, ensure that farmers are doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less. And that is the pressure that they face with on a regular basis. Before we even look at those broader spectrums, I mentioned earlier that women farmers actually face even greater challenges. Some of those that we've seen, and some I'd like to highlight, is the lack of land ownership. So one of the key drivers of access to finance, access to farming, is the ability to own land. There's also only about a 13% ownership of women in even commercial farmers. So even when we move from a smallholder farmer space to commercial, only 13% of women hold land ownership. Unequal unemployment. Women are largely seen as seasonal workers and not permanent employees on farms. And also society and gender norms that sit deeply, deeply entrenched in rural agriculture. So those are some of the challenges we face, and some barriers that we need to break down in the years to come to drive gender equality, to ensure that we're supporting productivity boost on farm, and through women we can actually enable 150 million people to have access to food. And lastly, distributed impact. I heard this point yesterday, and I'm going to say it again, but that if you teach a woman to farm, the community will eat. And that is how you bring people, profit, and planet together into the world of agriculture. So what this looks like from a business perspective, and I think a lot of people from non-agricultural industries at the moment are saying, well, what role and what can my organization do? The agri-business value chain starts at production. It starts with the farmer and the services that you wrap around supporting a farmer. But it moves all the way through to trade and marketing of produce and commodities, which are your large global entities like Cargill, all of those organizations that some of us may or may not have worked with, the impact and development space, DFI, and then all the way through to business and finance. So there's the opportunity for us to get involved in the world of agribusiness finance, and also in the context of the retailers and the different supply chain managers. So the main message I wanted to leave there is that the spectrum is huge. The industry is massive, and it affects each one of us every single day. What that means for Standard Bank, as we've said, is we're committed to agriculture, supporting the ecosystem, and all that goes in the businesses that wrap around the agricultural sector. As an individual and as a woman, I dedicate my every days to thinking about how we as an organization with our business partners can influence and solve some of these key challenges we're seeing across the continent. And as One Farm, which is one of our key initiatives as Standard Bank, how do we ensure that we consistently are enabling access to services for women, access to market for women, and ensuring that we are including them in the agricultural systems that we across our various sectors. So I'm going to share with you one last video and a bit of a showcase on One Farm Share, which is one of our programs that we run. And it sets the scene on how locally in the South African context we are supporting women through a whole new innovative approach to how you support women in the agricultural sector. And then I'll break for our panelists.
Food security is a major concern in South Africa. But the truth is, there is enough food produced in South Africa for everyone to eat. One of the challenges is getting this food from farmers to those in need. There is a solution. Through a network of partner organizations, One Farm Share facilitates the distribution of fresh produce from farmers to vulnerable communities.
It's a slap to deliver stuff if you don't have, if that's not your job. That's not, we're not geared for that. One Farm Share made it so easy to donate produce. We gave them 2 pallets of apples. We gave them the address to pick it up. And they picked it up from the cold store, and that was it. And we would love to do more of that.
Here's how One Farm Share works. Registered charities list their food requirements with food distribution partners like Food Forward SA and SA Harvest. Through a partnership with Hello Choice, One Farm Share consolidates these requirements and sources food from farmers who can either sell their produce at discounted prices or donate surplus to the program. This means that every rand donated generates 1.6 times the food value at wholesale prices. This produce is then distributed to registered beneficiary organizations. What began as a COVID intervention has grown into a sustainable solution to a real problem.
We're so privileged, and there's a lot of people starving in our country. So for me, it's a no-brainer to just donate stuff. You might take it to the market and you get a 0 return or 5 rand return. But if you donate this, you know you're making a difference in people's lives. You're adding value to people's lives.
Farmers across the country have partnered with One Farm Share, and together, over 4,000 tons of produce have been distributed. For farmers, this has provided another opportunity, access to new markets.
Previously, what would happen is that farmers would just plant what they wanted to grow because it was easy and not necessarily that the market wanted. But now that you know that you're constantly getting orders, you actually can scale up and spend more time growing that particular commodity. And that is what a lot of the farmers need to scale up to be able to deliver on large volumes. We need to get small-scale farmers to move beyond subsistence, to being viable, to actually ending up being commercial if they need to. We are now able to actually utilize our land much more efficiently than before because you no longer have to wait for the market. This is one of the quickest payment systems that you can get. You deliver today, you're going to be paid within 24 or 48 hours. That is a big plus for farmers because that means you have your cash immediately and you're able to do some other stuff.
Giving will always be at the heart of One Farm Share. And by growing farmers' businesses, we ensure the supply of produce for years to come.
I think as farmers, if you're going to just send your stuff to a retail outlet, you're just a number, you're just one of the farmers, you don't feel that important. Here we've got a connection with the beneficiary organization. We get to go into the website of the food depots to get to see where our produce landed. We also get to hear the stories of what the difference and the impact this is making. The soup kitchens that are benefiting from this. We also get to donate produce as the farmer, so we feel that we are actually giving, to direct beneficiaries. As Africans, we come from a background of being communal, and if we can extend that into our farming business, it will work even much better. I keep on saying we can actually punch above our weight when we work as a group.
You can make a difference through food contributions, logistics support, or financial donations.
Good, so thank you. We're very proud of that initiative, and thank you. Thank you. And it's actually brought a lot of the ladies you see here together in our different organizations for us to work together and through the One Farm Share program and the various discussions we've had. So we've achieved some great things, and with our partners and with the various ecosystem partners we have through the One Farm Share program, over 19,000 tons of food has been distributed that would have gone to waste. So that is food that would have never have touched an individual's mouth and would have rather gone to waste at a farm. We managed to redistribute that to beneficiary organizations. We managed to pay out 56 million rand of 56 million rand to smallholder farmers who are contributing to the program. That is money into their businesses for them to grow their businesses. And we've been able to support some of our SDG goals. So it's really an exciting program, and we're excited to share the journey with you and keep following that journey with you. But I think importantly, it's time for us to open the discussion with the panelists and keep the theme of food security and our various roles as women in solving for that. And really the last parting statement before I kick that off is that no one is truly food secure until everyone is food secure. So thank you. I'm happy to have shared that with you. Our panelists today, we've got Quinty, Shanae, Ayanda, and Rachel. So what we'll do is we'll have a discussion, and as mentioned, we will break into a Q&A session after that. So please keep your questions for the end, and I know we are tight on time, but we'll make it great. So firstly, thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for your ears. Ayanda, maybe you could start in a bit of an introduction to yourself, your role, and the organization you're with, and what really brought you and your passion for agriculture.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you so much for participating in this session. So my name is Ayanda Mvimbi, and I work for the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality, the South Africa Multi-Country Office, which covers South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Eswatini, and Lesotho. So I'm going to start by saying that I grew up in a household where my grandmother was a farmer. So from breakfast to the last meal of the day, we were getting it from our garden. And I think to a large extent, that's been a driver for me because I do recognize the critical role that agriculture can play in contributing to social and economic outcomes. And also, if we look at data and we look at the size of the GDP that agriculture occupies, it's quite significant. But also, I want to highlight some of the key concerns that we have in relation to this. One is that even though women in sub-Saharan Africa occupy about 60% in agri-food systems, yet there are two things that I want to highlight. One is the issue of the gender pay gap. So with women receiving 82% for every dollar that is received by men, I think that's the first thing. And also, if you look at the issue of representation and decision-making across the board, women occupy 2% of boards in agri-system organizations globally, in particular women from low-income countries. I want to also just highlight the issue of the climate crisis that has posed a real threat in terms of agri-systems. The UN Women Report, recently released in September, has highlighted that there is an inextricable link between food insecurity and gender inequality. And this report further highlights that if nothing is done fast to address this issue, close to 1 in 4 women and girls will be severely food insecure by 2030. And it, in a way, confirms what the world leaders confirmed in September, that without addressing this issue, we are far away from food insecurity. The data in South Africa is also very critical for us to remind, because the recent data released by Statistics South Africa tells that 1 in 10 South Africans go to bed hungry. And that's 12 million out of 62 million people. So this is the motivation. We need to find ways that makes this work. We need to address food insecurity. We need to ensure that women really benefit and participate from various value chains, from farming, but also distribution and utilization of food. Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Ayanda. Quincy, you have a beautiful story, and thank you, a beautiful story in how we've all come together. So maybe you can share that with the audience.
Okay. My name is Quinty Rabopala. They say I'm the managing director, but I'm a farmer. And yes, farmers comes in this size as well. It's not only the the large people that can be farmers. I am a farmer, and listening to Ma'am Ayanda just highlighting some of the challenges that we are faced with as people. I'm so proud to say I am the solution to the problems that she's highlighted. My farm, they call it a garden sometimes, and that makes me so upset. I call it a farm. It's a 1.5 hectare farm. It's situated in Midrand, so we are farming high-value produce. Nikki highlighted that land is an issue. Actually, in the black culture, it's a cultural issue. If a woman has got 5 children and one of the children is a boy, if there is a land in the family, it goes to the boy. But I'm saying as women, we should not see this as a disadvantage and stop. There are innovations, there's technologies that we can use to our advantage. For example, we've got hydroponic technology, which requires minimum land, but the output can be greater. And on top of that, there is environmental benefit to it, because we can conserve water through that. We can limit the use of pesticides through that, because it's an enclosed environment, so the pests, they don't get access easily. So those are some of the technologies that as women we should take advantage of, and not use our disadvantage as a way to sit down and not do anything. Me, I'm a technology farmer. It's just that I haven't gotten money as yet to do the hydroponic system. But I am selling my produce on Uber Eats. Can you believe that? The app was made for restaurants, for KFC, you order KFC or Nando's. But I saw an opportunity. I said, there are people who don't want to eat KFC. They want fresh vegetables. So I process the vegetables in my farm. I do stir fry, I do chakalaka mix, I do coleslaw. I package them nicely, and then I put it on Uber Eats. So in the comfort of your own home, you can get our produce that way on the ground an hour ago into your plate. So I am very, very proud of my accomplishment, and I hope that I would never, get discouraged with the challenges that we face with as women. Another example, Nikki mentioned that the One Farm Share. I'm actually a beneficiary of One Farm Share. I am, like Mama Sithole there, I also distribute the vegetables to various charities of Standard Bank. So there is a tagline that says, have you eaten today? If the answer is yes, you must thank the farmer. So I am that farmer. That farmer is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Quincy. Thank you. An incredible story. And moving over to Rachel, an introduction to yourself and a little story about your journey in agriculture.
So I'm Rachel Chikwamba, and I was born on a farm, so I was born into agriculture. And literally the only thing that we bought on that farm was cooking oil, because everything from meat, milk, bread, and stuff like that was from the farm. And growing up, of course, I then went to study plant science in agriculture. And when I was born, agriculture was not sexy. It was drudgery, it was hard work. And part of what I have done and what I do today is to provide technology and innovation that makes agriculture more efficient, that takes out the drudgery from farming, that adds value to produce, that opens up opportunity for farm produce to find markets abroad. So when I listen to my colleagues speak, and I want to congratulate the farmer to my right, who is harnessing technology and putting food on our table, I think about my institution that I work for now. I am responsible, an executive responsible for agriculture and food. And we are there to avail technologies to farmers. In fact, I think we have one project with yourself with the Black Umbrellas where you participate. The whole idea is, how do we avail publicly sponsored research infrastructure, translational infrastructure that takes raw materials into high-value products, avail that to farmers to help them to actually get more out of the produce that they make. At the primary production level, you spoke about the work that you do in hydroponics. This is something that is very easily done when you're dealing with high-value crops, when you're working with a smaller space. Many of our farmers on the continent still farm in the open. They still farm subject to the elements. And so we do work in precision agriculture to support the whole idea that you can use minimal amounts of inputs to be able to get really maximum amounts of outputs. And these are things that make, for me, agriculture highly attractive. I'll talk a little bit later about how technology and digitalization allows us to view our farms, allows us to respond to what they need in time, allows us to access markets, allows us to really, really be involved in commercial agriculture from farm to markets to value-added products. Hopefully there's an opportunity to speak more to that a little later.
Thank you, Rachel. Over to you, Shanae.
Thank you, Nikki. So I am the disaster manager at AgriSA and an agricultural economist. However, like the ladies were saying, agriculture is not just the maize that's growing in the fields. Agriculture is the whole value chain and supply chain. So there's so many opportunities for women in the agricultural landscape. And luckily, I can be a voice for the farmers. So I assist the farmers to help them to prevent disasters of occurring, as well as to assist them when the disasters occur. So that is why I love agriculture. And I'm very honored to be part of this panel today.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. So I think I'd like to come back to Rachel, the point where we know that agriculture is one of the largest employers of women on the continent. How have you seen that technology come together to support women in this space? And particularly, what is the most relevant innovation and tech you've seen that could be applied? And you've mentioned one or two, but when you look at the world of tech and innovation, it actually can be overwhelming. It's where do you go? Which one do I use? Which one's really going to move the needle for my business? What would your recommendation be?
So I've already spoken to some of the technologies that are really relevant to making farmers in general, but women in particular, more efficient in agriculture. For me, I think access to information is one of the most powerful tools that will transform agriculture. Because when women have access to information, they can really try to tame the value chain from all the way accessing agricultural inputs, understanding when they should plow, with the predictions in weather and what the weather might be on a particular season, they could decide what it is exactly